Hi everyone, welcome to the Mojo Play Conference 2020, and we're here with a fab panel to talk about the perfect pitch, and if there is such a thing. So I thought we could kick it off with just going around and introducing ourselves and how we came to be in the toy industry potentially as well. Should we start with Al? Should we start with you?
Sure, why not? Hi everyone, I'm Al, Alpesh I should say, that's my full name. I work for TOMY, and I've been working for TOMY for about just over 7 years now, and I head up global toy design for them, and it's a really privileged position I'm in, and I absolutely love it. How I got into the toy industry, always dreamed of being in toys from a very young age, was, having new toys, taking them apart, parents shouting at me of why I've just broken a brand new toy, put them back together and invented a new toy. So first started my career with Hasbro, had a really great stint with them, and then I did my own thing for a couple of years. I was doing a lot with Disney, and then worked for Disney for quite a few years, and then got called over by an ex-boss to come over to TOMY and work with some amazing products. And as I said, about 7 years ago, made the transition over, and it's been brilliant.
Nice, sounds good. And Emily?
Yeah, I'm Emily. I work at Gibsons Games. I'm the product development manager, and I sort of fell into the toy industry fairly accidentally, but a very serendipitous accident. I used to work in buying and developing children's hair accessories and jewellery, and was quite heavily involved in kind of the license side of it. So it was always kind of skirting that line between a toy and a fashion accessory, and it was always good fun from a testing perspective as to what was classed as a toy and what wasn't. But I did that I sort of started kind of straight out of college and kind of worked my way up in the kind of buying team, and it became apparent that product development was what I was best at. And just kind of met Gibsons actually through a licensing agency, and when they decided to take on a product development manager, just kind of went for the interview, and it's all worked out really well. And as it turns out, I've always loved jigsaw puzzles and board games, so it's a really good fit, and basically a massive child. So toys is perfect. It's a perfect industry for me.
You often find actually that people end up with working in products that they ended up really loving as a child.
It's a very common theme in the toy business, isn't it?
Yeah. Oh, lovely. Yeah, and you, Dougal?
So my name's Dougal Grimes. I do Inventor Relations for Spin Master Games. How did I get into the toy industry? I wanted to design toys and games, but I'm the youngest of 6. I have 5 older brothers, and I think the way that we kind of communicated was through competition and games. Like you don't talk about other stuff, you just like try and battle each other the whole time. So always play games going on in our house, and toys. And I actually, before games, I wanted to design Kinder Egg toys. I was always really into it. I don't know if everyone obviously on this probably knows what Kinder Egg toys are, but Kinder Egg, and they have a little egg in it, and there's always really cool things hidden inside them. It was always pretty amazing how you could fit certain things in there. I always think that they used to be better, but I think that's like rose-tinted glasses. Like, oh, back in the day, they had so much stuff in them. Yeah. Anyway, I studied product design engineering at Strathclyde in Glasgow. And then they wanted me to work in the oil industry. They were like, you can't make money doing toys and games. And I was like, I'll show you. And then I joined Hasbro in the London office. I worked for Hasbro for 10 years. I did a bunch of different jobs, which was great. Marketing, sales even, then back to product development. Worked in Germany for a bit and then moved to the USA. And then last year joined Spin Master in their New York office, looking at effectively Inventor Relations, just looking for new products and working with external design resources to help fill out our portfolio.
Lovely. That's cool. That's really good. And I'm Fee. I have a little tiny invention studio called Making Things down in the South Coast. And prior to that, I was actually on the other side, like all of these guys, in-house. And I worked for Vivid and Crayola, doing that for about a decade. And prior to that, how I kind of got my foot in the door in terms of the toy industry and the kids space was I had a placement year designing playgrounds as part of my university degree, which was also mega fun. And that gave me kind of experience within the kind of the play world, I suppose, and designing play experiences, which then was just a little snippet of something on my CV to get me a job as a junior product designer at Vivid when I came out of uni. So yeah, that's how we all started and where we are now. So what I thought we could start with is, it's kind of an interesting topic and maybe a bit more of a discussion, but is there a formula to a winning pitch? So obviously, amongst all of us, we would have seen thousands of pitches and delivered them as well, because that's something I want to talk about, is what happens in-house and how you have to deliver those pitches. I think it's something that inventors obviously don't get to necessarily experience if they haven't worked in-house, of what you guys would have to do with that concept yourself to actually sell it into the business. But before that, is there a winning formula to a pitch? So there's the three things involved. There's the product, there's the person, and then there's the pitch, you know, how it's delivered. Do you think that all of those three things need to completely kind of fire on all cylinders? Or do you think you just need, it's all about the product, and actually the person is the person and what they deliver in terms of assets is mediocre? Or that'd be an interesting, I think, opinion piece if anyone wants to kick that off. So, should we go?
I don't mind. I don't mind kicking that off. I think it's really difficult to have a winning formula in anything. You know, as human beings, you know, we're always trying to find out what's the best way of doing something, and how can I absolutely achieve something with no failure. And part of being an inventor and part of being a toy maker is not everything's based on a formula. You have to take risks, and then work out if it's going to be a winning formula afterwards or not. The three P's that you mentioned, Fee, I mean, for me personally, they're all three of them are really, really important. I would say the pitch side of it is slightly less important for me, but it could be really important for Emily or for Dougal. But the product's the hero, right? I mean, that's why we're talking to inventors, and inventors are talking to us. It's all about the product. If the product's not great, you know, we're not going to take it on. It's as simple as that. So there's a very simple formula for that. In terms of the person, so say there is a great product. For me, I've always kind of dealt with people based on relationships. So I think the better relationship you have with someone or a group of people or an organization, the better collaboration you have together, and the better understanding you have of each other's needs and wants and skills and so forth. So for me, the person is really important, because once you get past that product, you're dealing with a person on the business side of things as well. And Dougal, I know you'll know this very, very closely. And sometimes that can be the most difficult part of working with an inventor, is getting down to what the contract is and so forth, and all the boring things that probably our viewers don't want to talk about. But the person's really important. From a pitch point of view, sorry, I'm going on here. I think as long as a pitch is delivered with passion, and that someone really loves the product that they're pitching to you, and they believe in that product, I think as long as they've got that, they can do it in any way, whether it's a video or a good presentation in person or wherever. But the products and the person are first for me, and the pitch is kind of a bonus afterwards.
Yeah, that's really interesting, because I think, yeah, what's very interesting, I think, is every company and every inventor acquisition person definitely functions differently. So I think that's really good insight. Emily, Dougal, do you have any like differing thoughts to that, or how it works in your companies?
I think Alpesh probably hit the nail on the head with exactly what I had kind of made notes on this. I sort of had thought exactly the same. For me, it's all about the product. You'd hope that would be, you know, the hero. And different people have different strengths. So, you know, you might not be the most fantastic presenter, but that doesn't mean that you don't have a great idea. And I would hope that I would never just completely discount a fantastic product based on either the person or the pitch. But in terms of the person, I do agree that's really important. And for me, it's just really important that they're, you know, that they're personable, that you feel that you can work with them, and that, you know, they have the enthusiasm, but equally that they're, you know, open to discussing possible changes, and that they're not too kind of, you know, it's not too much their baby, that they're not willing to accept, you know, constructive criticism, and just, yeah, generally needing to be kind of open and honesty, to be honest, you know, to feel that you're actually having an open and honest discussion with someone, that they're not putting on any kind of airs and graces to try and impress you. I think it's just way more important to actually get to know the real person that you will be working with. So I you know, I don't like to feel that I'm being kind of acted to. So I suppose for me, the pitch side of it is really quite low down, because I kind of don't want you to do singing and dancing that kind of isn't the everyday. I just want to kind of meet the real person, the person that I'm actually going to be working with. But I suppose to add to that, for me, especially with games, I feel like there's a fourth P, which for me would be a prototype, or an actual working you know, example of the product. It doesn't have to be beautiful, but I love to be able to actually play with it, and actually play test it, particularly with a game. At the end of the day, if it's not fun to play and I don't want to play it, and I don't enjoy playing it, then you know, it's probably going to be a no. So
yeah, a bit of a self-fulfilling prophecy.
Yes, exactly.
Okay, cool. And yeah, Dougal, what are your thoughts?
There's kind of two types of pitches for me. There's, just call it the elevator pitch, which is I'm totally unprepared, I've got to communicate something very quickly. And then there's just the regular pitch. When you're doing, like, if you're in a scenario and this comes up, and there's certain events in the industry and moments where you'll be walking a show and you don't know who your audience is. It's kind of all about the audience, I think, because if you're just, someone's walking the show, I'm walking the show, and I just bump into someone, then it is for me a little bit all about the pitch, because they know nothing about me. They don't know anything, and they've got probably a good, as you know, like on YouTube, like studies on YouTube, probably got about 5 to 10 seconds worth of my attention. And I'm not just saying that because I have a low attention span, which is very true anyway. But the fact is, you have to capture them straight off. So I think in the elevator pitch style, you definitely obviously need to know more about your product, what the intrinsic benefits of it are, and how you can communicate that very, very quickly. But I would say the majority of the time now is let's just say your regular pitch, where you have the ability to understand who you're pitching to and the company you're pitching to. And you should spend a little bit of time understanding whether it's right or not for them. Because, and I think that's where the perfect pitch comes in. Times when people have come to me and they've had time beforehand to research the type of companies that we work for, you know, so we're a mass market games company, you know, we make things like headbands and things like that. But someone comes in with a very complex, like, German strategy game and goes, here's my game. That is a bit of a disconnect, because there's probably an opportunity before that where they can understand the audience of what we do. And I would always encourage inventors, even now, you know, you can go on LinkedIn, you can go on Google, you can find everything within 5 minutes about who you're pitching to in the audience, and to make them understand what it is you're trying to get across to them. So there are the two sides of it. Always be ready and know about your product and the intrinsic benefits. And I think in that way, you've got to follow the model of things like Kickstarter, like look at successful Kickstarters, their videos, because effectively they're doing like an elevator pitch. You know, people are stumbling on it, they get told about it. The successful Kickstarter videos are a good model by, I have 40 seconds, I'm going to capture your attention. Other than that, you can get into the nuances of things with a larger scale pitch. And that's the same as what we have to do internally. Say we're pitching to like the CEO or the founder of a company. We know what they want to hear. They're like, this makes X amount of, you know, it costs this much. We think it will do this volume. So you gear your pitch towards them. So just building on what these guys have said, just either, unless it's completely raw, understand your audience is a really important thing. So I think that goes into the person part of it. We automatically assume if you're pitching, you know your product and you can communicate it probably. So you can work on that anyway, but understanding the person and what they might be looking for is going to increase your chances of a successful pitch. That's very important for me.
Yeah, I think that's all really, really great comments. I think on that as well, some of the I suppose from my side, the best pitches that I've been involved with when then talking to an inventor acquisition person is when it does feel like a partnership kind of from the get-go. So it's a discussion versus you kind of like that elevator pitch where that one person is just talking and the other person is just kind of a vessel for however long. They don't say anything, and at the very end they pass a comment and it's kind of yay or nay, and then you go to the next one. That seems to happen less and less these days. It definitely does seem to be much more of a straight off the bat, almost a development conversation in terms of if there's some interest in it, then it seems.
And one thing that, sorry to interrupt, but one thing that like both these guys talked about was of course, like the enthusiasm. If you know your product and you know what's great about it, and the passion and the enthusiasm can carry through a lot of that and make the other side make it a successful pitch. So that is also particularly important. Conveying your excitement effectively, because we work in play and things like that, conveying the benefits through yourself and the passion will always help.
Yeah, I think that brings me on to then actually that the P of the person. So how almost in terms of maybe that isn't important going into that relationship though, like you guys were saying in terms of contracts and moving forward, how much value of that invention do you put on that person? Say for example it's kind of a one SKU invention, but you know that potentially they're either a professional inventor or they're a large invention house, therefore they have maybe additional resource. They'll have the capacity to, if for example it was a partnership in development, that they could also help develop some of the product, they could stress test more prototypes, they can essentially be an R&D resource as well as the initiator of the idea. Is that quite important to you? Obviously key is that it's an idea you want to take on, but is that something that's a strength and plays into signing a concept?
I guess it really depends. It's a tough one to answer that, Thea. I guess it really depends on the item. There's cases where we've been presented some, going back to Dougal's point, which is a really, really important point, where people have really prepped on what we're after. They've looked at our portfolio, they've looked at our direction of the type of expertise that we have, and they pitch a great product because they know it's something that we're naturally looking for, whether it be next year or the year after. I think when there's ideas that come a bit left field, and I'm really open to left field ideas, it's my struggle is convincing my bosses of going left field, right? They've got a strategy for the organization, and I've got to try and convince them of why we should do something left field. I think if there's something left field where I naturally don't have the resource to take it a little bit further to really fit within in our organization, I love it when inventors come, offer the ability to say, all right, let me go take a look at this and I'll tailor it to your needs, or let me have a look at it in a different way. And I'll always say that with a caveat. I'm always brutally honest with all inventors, which is, I'd love it if you do it, but just got to realize that there's a risk to doing it. I don't want people or inventors to spend money, to spend time on the hope and dream that we're automatically going to take it. But I'll always be honest and say, do you know what? It really improves the chances of this being considered to take it to the next level if it's slightly more tailored for us as well. So I think I've answered your question. If I haven't, I apologize, but I think that's where you were getting to.
Yeah, I think yeah, the fact is, I suppose no pitch is the same, and obviously it's because of the company that you're pitching to, as well as then the person pitching. They will all have a different attribute, so you're never ever going to get the same circumstances each time. And particularly, you guys, of all your books are open to kind of non-professional inventors as well. So they could have obviously a fantastic idea, and it may be that their skill set can't necessarily move that idea on, but you want to sign it as it is, and therefore in-house you would then develop it and move it forward.
Yeah.
I think for Gibsons it's often quite a plus point, I suppose, as long as you've got the right skills and that they are genuinely useful and kind of the product requires it. But because we're a much smaller company, we don't have a huge resource in terms of product development. It's kind of just me and a couple of other people who I bounce ideas off of. So it is often quite a big selling point if there's actually, you know, the inventor is really keen to continue doing work on it with you. But it's that partnership that you mentioned, that feeling like they're working with you on it and not, you know, kind of wanting to do just their thing with it, but actually, you know, if they're willing to help you to make it as good as it can possibly be, and work in partnership, then I'd say that's a pretty big bonus for me. Yeah, as long as I sort of can work with the person, then it's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that it's like any creative agency model. And like for me, like all the most successful items we've done, and also the most enjoyable projects, have been when the inventors, authors have always been very collaborative and very open about their skill sets and the limitations. And I think it's actually kind of interesting you pulled that into the pitch, because I think you don't want to say like, give like a menu at the end and say, this is all the skills I have. But I think it's very important actually as part of the pitch. If someone's pitching a, let's say an electronic game, and they've made like a small prototype, and then at the end they say, look, I can do programming, I can do, you know, rapid prototyping, but I won't be able to work fully out the gameplay. But, you know, offering those services can then lead to other projects. And that's happened over the course of time. And I'd say particularly for like outside, I would say probably like the major companies, you know, they don't have big development teams. Like, you know, places like Spin Master and that have like engineers and design engineers and all those. But even we still use external resources for a lot of these things. But I'd say like for a lot of companies, using inventors and maximizing what they can offer, because ultimately at the end of the day, we're all just trying to make the best possible product. And so I think offering up those as part of the pitch is very wise. But just to build on that, there is a fine line, because I think that, again, the most successful inventors have also known when to let go. You don't want to have a situation where the inventor is like, well, no, I think that it should be like this, it should be like this. I have to say the most successful ones is when they believe that the company, you know, who has seen the vision for this or the insight, let them do what they do. And sometimes it can take it into different places, but to kind of tie back to what you're saying, I think it is important as part of the pitch to say, well, these are my capabilities and I could help you with rules writing, you know, and that's always something. I don't do that to make it a better product. So I think that's a good point.
Yeah, I think, yeah, being totally transparent with your skill set is a great thing to do, because often what does come back is questions of, we like it, but where can we go with this next? And if there's interest in it, it does need to kind of be determined at that point who's going to be able to do it, and almost kind of falsifying and hoping you could do something. Like, I definitely know where my weaknesses lie, and I have to be pretty honest with them in terms of everything from funds to capacity to, when you're a solo inventor, it's not the same as being a larger inventor house where you maybe have a little bit more resource.
Yeah, and that's where good collaborations come in, of course, between invention resources. Like, I know how to model make, you know how to program, I can do games. Like, you get this kind of trifecta, and I think being self-aware of the limitations in that, in your own abilities, and finding that in other people can further something even beyond that. So it's important.
Yeah, lovely. The other topic that I thought would be interesting to talk about is kind of toys versus games in terms of the pitch process. So is there something, say for example within games, that potentially with, say, action games, it might be that wow moment, especially more on the toyetic side, and particularly within toy inventions, maybe it's that, what's that emotive response of anything that invention creates, versus potentially on games where some of them are more strategic. They actually sometimes could take a little bit longer to explain, particularly on more strategy-based gameplay. How do people pitch those into you, and how do you receive those on kind of equal measure? Who wants to kick that one off? Who does toys and games? Ow!
I think Dougal begins for this one. I'm after some insight from Dougal on this part. So
okay, well, I can start. I was waiting because I talked last, so I'll talk a little bit about games and the pitching of it. And I think, again, it depends on a few things. It depends on the category of game. So, for example, games we kind of split into 4 areas. You've got kids, family, adult, jigsaw puzzles, so to speak, right? And so say kids games, for example, your classic, your Hungry Hippos and things like that. You don't need that much time to get the idea across. You need to know what's the magic moment, and literally, you know, the way that's the audience is going to be 4-year-old child, and you know, you're trying to. It's like as if you were dealing with a 4-year-old child. It's like, here, this is amazing. It gobbles up all the marbles. You kind of can communicate that very fast. So in that category, you can get by, I think, with a 5-minute pitch of what it is, you know, and some form of visual of what it is. And importantly, as Emily said as well, if there is some magic thing in the physical game, showing what that magic is. Oh, it's a mechanism that jumps up, or the pants disappear, or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But then when you get into games that obviously require a little bit more time, things like potentially a party game where there are nuances in it, you of course want to play through it. Now, depending on the experience, like, you know, been doing it for a little while, by no means claim I know every single game, but sometimes you can get, if someone's like, oh, this is like code names mixed with da-da-da, you can kind of get the gist of it, but at the end of the day, we will always still have to play it or have some form of video walkthrough. And depending on the pitch situation, so say I'm at like a toy fair, you've got like half-hour slots or whatever, you don't want them to waste it. You want them to get across lots of ideas rather than sit, unless they have the one idea, just sit and go through it, because our mind as the audience isn't going to be jumping into like play game mode and come out of it. So in that regard, for games, when it comes to something that does require that nuance, you still have to communicate, this is why we think it's right for you, this is why we think it's different. And then also be prepared to have a prototype or some form of playthrough or video playthrough that we could review at a later date. That's generally my area, and I'll batch, obviously come back from a toy fair and you've got like 100 games to play. You're like, oh great, this is gonna be good. But it's like you have to be ready to do that and have like some form of walkthrough. So depending on the category.
That's great advice. Because I think some inventors may think, particularly at those live pitches, actually that's maybe the opportunity to get the thing physically out in front of you. But like you say, when those half-an-hour slots, particularly if you've got maybe 2 or 3 games to get through, there just isn't the time to start unwrapping, laying out, getting everyone into game mode with a beer. It's not really.
I do think it's important with like a bigger, if you've got a strategy game or a game that takes a bit longer to explain, that you can come up with a catchy, like a quick way of explaining the gist of it. Like Dougal was saying about, you know, is it like code names but mixed with something else? But if you can do that in a way that actually convinces me that we'll actually find it quite easy to market it, then that can help. Because I often find, you know, when someone can sit there and explain it to me, and then when you have to go back and pitch it internally or tell someone else about it, if you can't explain it in a way that makes it sound interesting within a couple of minutes, then it's you've got to think like, how are we going to market this successfully? How are we going to tell the consumer that they want to play this game if in the, you know, that the person who made it can't make it sound interesting to me in the first couple of minutes? Then how am I going to then pass that on to a wider audience? So I think it's quite important to kind of come up with a something like a blurb for it, or, you know, a kind of 5-minute explanation that actually makes you, even if you can't sit and play it at that moment, it makes you want to play it. It makes you think there's an idea there. I'd like to see how the game actually progresses, but in theory, I like the sound and I want to play that, as if you've just kind of read the back of the box in a shop, and it makes you want to take it home.
Yeah, because there's some games that you almost, I think even if you were to describe them, even in the best kind of marketing treated language, you still maybe couldn't get across the magic until you actually play it. So take something like Codenames. Awesome game, word of mouth by far. Anytime anyone says it's just like, you got to play it, let's play it out. And as soon as you play it out, you're in, and you're going to tell your next family member or your next friend, and it kind of goes on from there. But if someone was to give you that blurb, you'd go, oh cool, kind of clear picture matching. All right.
Yeah, no, you're right. I think it's a good, just build on that. The way, getting your mind into the way a company would then communicate it to the gamer or the consumer is so important, because that's what our jobs would be. So, for example, if you're communicating the Hungry Hippos, majority of the time now, even nowadays, it would still be like traditional TV advertising. So what have you got? You got 30 seconds. So we have to do that job anyway. Or with a game, even with like a strategy game, people are picking them up at a Gen Con or one of these kind of conventions. Even then, and gamers, people will pretend that gamers are not as fickle. They're even more fickle, because they're walking down an aisle and they'll see something laid out and they'll be like, oh, and then some guy will be like, hey, this is about trading meat to 14th century Japan. And then he'll be like, nah. Like, so there is, does sound like a fun game, but there is still getting your mind into the mindset, as Emily said, of when you would be sold the idea, which is generally by some form of communication or marketing, either digital media or traditional or in word of mouth. Think of it in that way, and that would help your own pitch, because that's the same job that we have. You're kind of doing our jobs for us.
Yeah, I suppose with games, that's such a big difference to toy, whereby obviously both sold off packaging, but say, for example, you're in a games cafe and you're scouring it like you would a bookstore. You're kind of looking through to see which one are we going to take to the table. Probably something that you've never played before, because you're there to try something new. And you literally are judging it by its cover. So I suppose even if they had an opening image or something that you go, that image makes me want to open that box. And then I suppose that's very similar to toy in the sense that obviously whatever
Which
is
where, sorry, just one last thing on this. This is where the formula you said comes in very handy. And this is one thing I learned about pitching, was the A plus B equals C. Oh, it's Jenga plus sun cream. I'm only saying that because I can see the sun cream equals my new game. And like, so the thing about now, particularly now in the current climate where there's a lot of uncertainty, people gravitate to the familiar. And I think people name it in different ways. There's the California roll principle. It's like something slightly familiar with something new equals my game. And that's a good way of in, because that's how the human mind always works. It's like, has to be a little familiar. Oh, I try something new. That's my game.
Totally that, yeah. The familiar made unfamiliar is
intrigued by this Jenga sun cream game though, because that just like
sounds
finger with really slippery fingers.
I have a lot. I've got like so many factor hundreds here. Just gotta make sure I don't burn. There we go. There we go. Jenga.
Oh wow.
This is only 2 of the canisters. I'm gonna be careful. Okay, sorry.
Fab, okay. And then in terms of that, maybe that magic moment or that first thing you look for in a toy pitch, is that something that makes you smile, laugh, weirded out? What is the thing that captures you when you're looking at toy?
For me, there's a bit of everything, Fiona. I think all things that you said, Fiona. Very proper there. It's a bit of everything, Fee. I think first of all is going back to what I was saying earlier, is looking at, for example, Gibsons has a very different product portfolio to what Spin has, to what TOMY has. So first thing I'm always looking for is, it's very difficult to start new brands today. Of course, we'll always continue to push new brands, but it's very, very difficult. So I'm looking at, usually when I'm looking at new inventions, I'm thinking, actually, where could they possibly go in some of the core brands that we have, rather than having to start a new brand. Not saying that we wouldn't start a new brand for really great ideas, but it's a mixture of everything. I think biggest thing for me, I think all 4 of us are big kids, right? So we're looking for something that either we've not seen before, or just genuinely think's really interesting, or wow, that is really, really cool. We're looking for that kind of reaction that we would feel when we were kids, when we first saw that toy or played with that toy that we really, really wanted. So it's the excitement level, it's the feature level, it's whether it fits within the brand that we're working on, whether it fits within our expertise. We get presented a lot of things that are kind of so far beyond our expertise, and we have a limited size team as well. Even though we'd love to have them types of products, they're not within our wheelhouse. It's just something that we wouldn't necessarily suit. We have a DNA of what a TOMY toy is like. So presenting something that's outside that DNA is probably not the best way. But
yeah, that must be something that particularly from your guys' side, it's I mean, it's tiring pitching, obviously, when you're at a pitch event and you're just constantly talking and you've got loads of energy and it's an amazing adrenaline fueled time. But equally, you guys have to listen and absorb, and it's constant. Obviously, someone's coming to see you every half an hour or so with multiple ideas. There must be a little bit of fatigue going through that in terms of how much a brain can see and how many new ideas really feel like new ideas. And then when you see something that's, wow, okay, that literally has woken me up a little bit more.
Yeah, completely. And the ideas that really stand out from the rest is because someone's actually taken the time to really think about something. What I find at the moment is that we get a lot of inventions or a lot of submissions through, which are based on a small tweak of this and that and the other. And, you know, to be quite honest, you know, toy manufacturers are fully capable of finding a trend and tweaking a toy from the past to make it even better. So we've got, you know, something that personally I don't like to do, but we've got the ability to do that. What I'm really after from an inventor is something that is completely original. Now, it's very hard to have something original. There's millions of toys being made by thousands of manufacturers every single year. So it's really hard to be original. But where they've taken a theme or they've taken a common play pattern and just added a complete different dimension onto it. You know, they've thought about it from a different angle. They've thought about how, you know, kids interact with products today rather than 20 years ago. They've taken the time to make the prototype or to do an excellent presentation with some really good media and really explain it well. That's what gets me really excited. I think it's a real turn off when I see lots of things based on other products that are currently out there with a slight tweak. And the worst turn off for me, and you know, I know there's gonna be a lot of other inventors watching this, is where they've taken one of our products, you know, where someone internally at TOMY has invented a product and they've changed, you know, one element of it and have resubmitted saying, hey, I know this pop-up pirate toy sells amazingly, you know, you sell millions of units every year, why don't we change that to a clown, you know, and submit that through? And that for me is not invention. Invention is about coming up with stuff, about thinking differently and really celebrating creativity in a different manner of thinking.
Yeah, because I think that's where that invention obviously lacks innovation.
Okay.
I was having a hot moment then, guys. I think I was about to pass out or something. It's so hot.
What I thought would be interesting for inventors know, particularly maybe some inventors that are going to be new to the Mojo event who will be pitching to you guys, would be what happens internally. So you are obviously the inventor's kind of gatekeeper, and I think it would be really useful for them to know actually the amount of work that goes into getting that idea through all of the in-house stakeholders that need to be involved in making the decision, and what you have to do with that pitch. So say, for example, an inventor does a pitch in a particular way or shows you an energy or explains maybe this extra kind of commercial side to the concept, or not only could be this, but also actually there's potential to turn it into a content animation property. And that's something that you would then take from that pitch and either replicate that pitch and present it to your internals, or do you put your own spin on the pitches and add in your own thoughts and additions to kind of sell it in? So I thought that would be good for everybody to just tell people about. Emily, do you want to start?
Yeah, sure.
You go to Gibsons?
I'm quite lucky being at Gibsons with a very small company. It's a, you know, small family business, so there aren't loads of hoops to jump through. You know, there's not loads of people in loads of different departments to talk to. And we're a very sort of close-knit team, and which is one of those kind of sad things about having to work virtually at the moment, is that you can't do this. But generally, you know, I see someone pictures something great and I run back upstairs to the office and like, guys, I've just seen this, and almost just the initial enthusiasm of, you know, being excited about something will come across, and that's kind of the first kind of selling point. And we'll all sit in one office and someone will go, oh, and obviously really excited about that one, you know, when can we play it? And if I feel really strongly about something, then, you know, I'll kind of get the kind of key people together. So, you know, the directors, the marketing team, the sales team, and when I say team, it's kind of one or two people from each of those places. So it's not a huge meeting, and kind of hopefully have been left a prototype, and we can have a game, and we can play it, and I'll kind of enthuse about it. And sometimes I'll take different approaches. So if I immediately love something, and I can see why it's right for Gibsons, why it fits in our product range, why it would be a great addition to the market, and kind of and I feel really strongly about it, then I might kind of put my own pitch on it. And they jokingly call me Enthusiastic Emily in the office, because, well, it's probably not a joke actually, but occasionally I get asked to enthuse about something on purpose to kind of get people excited, because
I think that's exactly what everyone in the toy industry kind of needs to be, isn't it? It's part of your personas, in the sense that,
yeah,
like we were saying earlier, it's a whole pitch process that all the way right to the consumer.
Yeah, so if I really love it, if you've got me hooked and you get Enthusiastic Emily to kind of pitch to the rest of the team on your behalf, then that's probably half of the battle. If I'm not 100% sure, because just my opinion, I might not love playing something, but that doesn't mean that I can't see some sort of commercial value in it, and I might know that there are other people, or there's a Gibsons customer base out there for a game. That doesn't mean that I have to enjoy playing it. And quite often, if it's one of those, I get the kind of the key people together, or the people that I think would might like that, and I actually just give them the game and I say, you go and play that, and let me know what you think. Because if they just say, well, I didn't enjoy it, I don't understand, then it's a no. But they might have a completely different view of it than I had, and they might enjoy it loads. And then it's not about my opinion and the enthusiasm in me kind of driving it forwards. It's actually about the merits of the game.
And the commercial opportunity. So you can kind of you can see that part of it.
Because we have so many different types of customer at Gibsons. We don't have, like Alpesh talked about, kind of a TOMY, the DNA of a TOMY toy. With Gibsons, we do have the Gibsons values and things that we would see as a Gibsons product over something else. But we also, for quite a small company, have quite a few different categories, and we have, like, I think we work something like between 5 and 7 different customer profiles of people that we actually sell to.
Your age demographic is
enormous. Got some seriously old and lovely puzzle fans out there, and then we do stuff for preschoolers. So there's a lot to cover, and it doesn't necessarily all appeal to me personally, but and then the other the third way I kind of sometimes do things is that actually, if an inventor has come in with a really impressive pitch and I really feel like they've sold it really well and are the best person to talk about it, I might ask them to come back or present actually to a wider team, because possibly they'll probably do a better job than me, especially if it's potentially a slightly more complicated game. Or so if they really managed to impress me, then I just think, well, maybe you're the right person to actually impress the rest of the team, particularly if it is someone, like you said, who maybe has some extra skills, or are kind of selling themselves as part of the project as much as the game itself.
Oh, that's fantastic. That's really good for everybody to know. And then how about Spin? How does it work at Spin?
There's a lot of pitching that goes on. It's like one big funnel. I'd say, like, at the beginning of the funnel for the Inventor, the best things as for a pitch, of course, like giving us the material. So I'm the first kind of working with the games team and knowing what we're looking for. I'm kind of like the filter, so to speak. But if an inventor presents and they give us the right assets, like illustration, some kind of rendering, if applicable, video is probably up there with my top, actually, because that can be shared very easily, and some form of prototype, then we have the tools to then go in and then pitch it. And then for me, it's like, I'll go through the process, actually. Pitching the vision to the overall games leadership team. And then once that's up, we're pitching that vision to the overall leadership of Spin Master, the people who sign off on marketing money and tooling money. That might be one time, that might be 5 times. It just depends on where you are in a cycle. And things can go back and forward. Things might It might seem like they're on, and then it's off. But then after that, once you've convinced internally, then you've got retailers as well. So then you have to kind of convince the retailers that this is the best thing for their line. And then once it gets past that, of course, then you're onto the kind of the consumer. But the major stakeholders on the way for us are like the immediate team that is going to be working on it, which for me is the games team. Then the wider team that will sign off on overall, tooling and things like that. Those stakeholders, and then retailers. And between that, it could be, I've seen things go very quickly, very surprisingly, or just like a roller coaster ride of like, oh, it's on, it's off, oh, it's back, no, it's dead, oh, we're gonna change it, it's now a clown. Like it's very, but in a larger company, Spin Master being like a global corporation, that has many moving parts and many components over the world. There's a lot of different ways in which we try and align everyone effectively. So yeah.
Okay, that's good to know. I think that this might be something that TOMY experienced as well. But that being such large global companies, how do you then, I suppose, share that idea with other international offices to sense check? Is this a global opportunity? Is this English speaking? Is this US? Australia, New Zealand launch or whatever, wherever it's going to go. How do you determine if it's right for each market? Do you have dedicated people in those markets that you can kind of show them the idea and go, do you think this is going to work for Spain? Do you have teams like that?
We do, Fee. And by the way, just on the previous question, really good question to ask. Sorry, I just wanted to go back to that because for a lot of inventors, I don't think they realize how much work goes on in the background by either the inventor relations person or your contact or the rest of the team. There is so much work and so much back and forth and readjusting and talking to different teams. And I just want to tell all inventors out there that if you don't hear from your contacts for some time, it's not because they're ignoring you. It's just they're going through this endless cycle of different conversations and back and forth and things like that. So just a general comment, please always be patient with it. We'll eventually get back to you. But on the question that you've asked, the simple answer for that, Fee, now is we've got a real focus on global products now. As the world's come together, and especially over the last few months during the pandemic, we've really come to realize that yes, there's different cultures within children, but in terms of what they're after and what they're playing with and how they seek enjoyment from products, and we're mainly focused on children. We don't really do much outside of Japan. For the older market, we're really focused on children. They're pretty much the same. It all becomes about aesthetics and marketing and packaging essentially, but the core of the idea is the same. So when we're looking at inventions, we've always got a global eye on it. We feel the strategy that we best succeed from is a global product. So yeah, we're looking at all the markets. We obviously take lead from, the US is the biggest market. So if we can get the US on board and they love an idea, then we're going to do it without the support of the rest of the other territories if they don't particularly want to take it. But if we grab, the US and the UK and then start grabbing some of the other, other areas of Europe, Australia, Latin America, we know we're on a good thing. If everyone's saying, yeah, we've got a great item, we're on it. But the lens is always on a global item at the moment.
Yeah. Great. That's really good feedback from everybody. That actually the pandemic point, because we're going to have to talk about it at some point. Why not? It happens on every conversation. But in terms of the difference, I suppose, of kind of pre-COVID in terms of, for all of us, there was obviously a lot more face-to-face interaction, and in terms of inventing was a very social activity, and being at events and being able to present and be in the same room with another human and kind of really bounce off each other and physically put something in someone's hands is sometimes a winning formula to a pitch. If you can really get them to touch it, feel it and see it, that does make quite a big difference. However, there's also been some successes, obviously, and businesses have to go on virtually. So have you guys noticed a difference in either kind of the quantity that's been coming through, or has the output from inventors been the same no matter pre-COVID, virtually? Have you found the process fine being pitched to? I mean, it's pretty commonplace, obviously, that a lot of UK inventors, US inventors are pitching back and forth across the globe anyway, virtually. So maybe there isn't too much difference. How has it been for everybody?
I personally, I found that there's been no difference, to be honest. I had operated using, it was just Skype before. For some reason Zoom just became the thing, but I was doing Skype pitches anyway, and obviously the only component is actually physical product, but I would say that the majority of the time I was going by anyway video pitches and pitches through some kind of video conferencing. But then I would say that I haven't seen a huge change in how people have like, there's been a huge boom in people pitching products. I would say it's kind of around about the same, maybe even a little bit more. So people have probably been a bit more directed or specific. I don't know. They seem to be working on more specific briefs and tailoring their time when they're showing stuff like this is a game, which is a good thing, I think. But I haven't particularly seen that. The only change, is getting models sent to my house and then having to like go to the I mean, there's nothing wrong with that though. It's but that's the only change really.
Yeah, and how do you find people to play the games with?
Yeah, that's been a problem. I think that's been a problem for inventors as well. You know, the people they might have had more time on their hands, and certainly some of the ones that I work with have said, like, I've had a lot of time on my hands. I've thought of a lot of game ideas, but play testing them during a lockdown or a pandemic has been really hard. You know, you haven't just been able to meet up, or maybe you can now, but you know, earlier on in the pandemic, it was so much harder to play test, and people were trying to utilize like online platforms like Tabletopia and kind of putting things onto virtual player system, but it's not the same. And I think there is, you know, certainly more of an element of potentially, you know, this has worked with my family. You know, this has kept us entertained a few times. I actually had a really, really sweet approach from a couple in their 80s in Canada who had invented a game that's been entertaining them throughout lockdown. And they sent me a letter in the post to pitch their game. And, you know, it was just really adorable, but they obviously it entertained them, and that's fantastic. Not something that we went ahead with, but I just love the idea that potentially actually people who are not professional inventors and maybe haven't given it a go before have literally, they've been bored. They've needed stuff to do. Maybe there are people out there that didn't know that they could be a great inventor and have needed something to do, and here you go. You know, you've been furloughed from your normal job and I need something to do.
That's very true, and I think that's how for a lot of inventors it's almost a sort of a part-time role. So they've got their kind of professional role, and then they have this kind of secret inventor role as well going on, which potentially some people would have been able to focus even more time on, particularly if they were furloughed as well.
The only thing I'd like to add to that is, like Dougal was saying, it hasn't changed much for us, but I've become kind of quite close friends to a lot of the inventors. So, you know, especially UK ones that I see on a regular basis, or there's a toy show going on or a toy event where you get to meet them. So that I actually miss that face-to-face time, because usually, you know, you talk about the submission or a set of submissions, and then you go on to talk about, you know, more personal stuff or, you know, more buddy type of things. So I miss that element of it. But
yeah, I do too.
Really changed for us. Just another thing, we're really lucky because we focus down in the younger age group. We're really lucky to have loads of young families at TOMY. So we've been fine for testing. Everyone from marketing to PI to the design team to the sales team have all been taking you know, new games home to test and things like that. So we really haven't seen an issue on that side. So that's been
really good.
Been a bit of a benefit for us.
I just had to film a sizzle where it's a game, so I couldn't have, like, it should have been a kind of a group of friends playing around a table having fun, and yeah, it's kind of like split personality me. I'm like the person counting out the questions and then also answering them, but weird. But yeah, that's the only way to kind of show the gameplay really of it. Otherwise
it's really cool. A little side, like a side benefit for that, as I was saying, like it's been happening with us. So people taking it home, playing the games with their family, and like just even smaller internal pitches. And now you're getting to know their family. It's like, it's actually quite, there's the missing the actual social events. But weirdly, through these like videos of people playtesting with their families, like there's one of our designers and he's back home in Chicago and he's got like, he's quarantining with like, he's got like, it seems like 20 people in his family. And it's like amazing because he does these videos and it's like you're getting an insight into his life. It's kind of, there's a good benefit for that as well. So it feels a little bit internally, there's a bit more, it's personal, as you're saying, Al, like you've got this kind of like grassroots kind of thing going on, whereas before you might have used focus groups or external, but now it's like getting a bit more real, which is cool.
Yeah. No, that's very true. Yeah, you get an insight into people's lives as well, which is really.
We've actually one of my our sales director's daughters is really loves gaming, and she's actually copied into some of the development emails on an upcoming strategy game because she's play tested it so much and she loves it. She's like our, you know, she's our expert. So she's actually involved.
That's cool.
Oh, that's great. Okay, so maybe just looking at time-wise, to finish up, has anybody got, I think, Dougal, you asked this earlier, but has anyone else got an example of a product that has made to market that you're able to obviously talk about, that you remember the kind of the pitch and the process it went through to get to market, something that has performed really well? Or maybe performed okay, but it was a really great pitch.
Well, yeah.
Sorry, Emily, you go for it.
I think it's a fairly new product for us, but I suppose remember it quite well. But there's so many, they're all so different, because I sort of thought about this for a while after you kind of sent the questions through. But there's some that stand out because I just love the product. So like I met Dave Mortimer, and he presented our game Pixit at UK Games Expo, and I was completely distracted by playing it because he brought a great prototype and kind of put it in front of me, and he, poor guy's trying to, you know, pitch this game and present it to me, and I'm just sitting there fiddling with these cubes because I couldn't stop myself. They were so like tactile, and such a well-made prototype that I just wanted to play, and I just sort of was not ignoring him, but I was kind of really distracted by it. And then he left the prototype with me, and I think in the hour afterwards, when we had a bit of downtime, I went through every single card in the game and I couldn't put it down. And that was, you know, for me, that was like, well, I have to go back and share this with people, because it can't just be me that thinks this is, you know, really tactile and has got a bit obsessed with it. And then on the other end of the scale, when we worked on the card game Quirk recently with Emma, it was completely Emma and her, how impressed I was with what she'd achieved as an independent inventor and producer, because she'd actually already put the game on the market herself and she'd done everything herself. And that added value thing that you were saying about, you know, being, you know, because she'd done the illustration and she'd done the marketing, she'd done it all herself. And that really blew me away. And again, that was actually at UK Games Expo, and we were on her stand at UK Games Expo, surrounded by families and children playing the game. And I mean, what better kind of pitch can you kind of have than actually sitting amongst people loving it? And I think a child actually ran up to her and gave her a hug during our meeting to say, like, thanks so much for inventing this game, I loved it. And I didn't actually play the game during that first pitch, and I didn't feel like I needed to, because it is, you know, it's a simple game and it's really funny, but I could see everyone playing around me, I could see how much they were loving it. And I was just really impressed by everything that she'd managed to achieve as an independent person. And I just thought, you know, obviously as a you know, slightly bigger entity, we can do something great with this. So yeah, there's not like, that kind of leads back to that whole, is there a perfect pitch? There really isn't. They're so different, but they stand out in different ways.
The first one being that product that you couldn't put down, and then the second one being the kind of the skill set, the great product as well, but then the skill set of the person that's presenting it and who's the idea. Right.
I had one last year. So the product's coming out hopefully later this year. We're rushing it at the moment, so hopefully this year. But it was something we saw last year, and slightly different story to Emily's. But for me to get into design, I had an amazing, you know, in the olden days we used to call it CDT, right? Craft Design Technology. I had an amazing teacher at GCSE level who really unlocked my passion for design. And you know, I still think about him thinking, I really owe him what I have today, for him unlocking that potential out of me and pushing me and giving me suggestions of what a design career could do. You know, I never even thought about that. So last year we had a teacher who had, with his students, had come up with a really fantastic game. And the teacher didn't bring his students into the pitch. He was with another business partner, but took me through the game and showed me all the work that the students had done. The fact that they actually, got this game published in a very limited amount as a specialist item to sell. And as he was talking to me and I was seeing his students work, I was that kind of feeling of when I was a kid and having a CDT teacher. That was amazing. I saw this guy, he was my teacher from 30 years ago, wherever it was. I instantly fell in love, not with just him as a person for working with the students in a way of, bringing this item, but the idea was great. He had so much energy and passion. He was so proud of his students. He wanted his students to do other projects. And I was like, we're going to take this idea, even if it was a terrible idea, which it isn't, it's a great idea. I was going to take it. He got me on an emotional level, but also on a great product level. So we're really hoping it does well. And, the students get a little bit of royalty to help them, with their future career as well.
That's amazing. What a wonderful story.
Yeah, it was brilliant. Yeah.
Really. Conception. Yeah. I think as a consumer, God, I mean, or anyone that's even, sort of passionate about creativity or design, if you knew the background of how a product comes to life and who's been involved in that would be amazing. I think that would help sell it for sure.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool. And then from you, Dougal, is there anything memorable that's made it through the net?
All the ones that I've started work on, because I joined Spin Master last year, are all like filtering out now. But there's one that came to mind that's, and I was just like a fly on the wall from this, but it's had an interesting history. So we have a partnership with a UK games company called Big Potato, and they make fantastic adult and party games. And I remember like 3 years ago, they had a movie poster charades game that they showed me at Gen Con in like the back of some pub. And we played it and it was fun, but we're like, And the good thing about them is they they just moved on from it and they keep all their games as like almost like a pipeline.
Yeah.
And then fast forward, when I came to Spin Master, they had the partnership with Big Potato already. Mm-hmm. The Big Potato guy, so the guy Dean there, he had seen that Blockbuster Video was making like a resurgence, like through parody and in online. It was the last Blockbuster ever, and they also did some Deadpool 2 fake Blockbuster thing. So he said to the Spin Master guys, he was like, well, I think we have a game for this if you can work with us and get the license. So there was the partnership that happened there, and they came back and had the VHS cassette tape Blockbuster game, and it's evolved from what the game was, but it's a charades game, and it's doing really well for us. But it's so on trend at the moment with like retro nostalgia. It's got really cool gifting. It looks fun. You look at it, you're like, oh, I get the joke.
I have it, and it's incredible. Everything ticks the box of an awesome product.
Oh, it's a wonderful game. It's so and it just ticks a lot of the boxes. And I just like, I'm not take any credit for any of that. I just love that I saw, like, that's what's cool sometimes about that. They pitched it like 3 years ago, and I remember it, and he told me, it was like, that was the same game, but they sat on it. And then when the time was right, they added like the theme, so to speak, or the license, but that changed the product. It was like the packaging and the gameplay, and it's doing really well now, which is great for them and for us. But it was just cool just seeing that like over time. And like, that's how sometimes things can take. They can wait, the timing is right.
Yeah, that magic, I was going to say, that magic timing, had it been maybe that 3 years before in its iteration, it maybe wouldn't have been to the level it is now with the timing of Blockbuster, the nostalgia of VHS and movies, and it's fab.
Yeah.
It's a wicked game. It's one of those things where everything just sort of stars aligned. As always with an invention, that's often what happens, isn't it?
Yeah.
Lovely. Well, I think we should finish on that note. So thanks everybody for listening. It's been fab. Thanks everyone for chatting.
Thanks, Fee. Good to meet you, everyone.